Meeting to order, 4 o'clock, 4:01, minute late. The Lewiston City Council special meeting, February 24th, 2025, at the time and place is advertised. Councilors Floresman, you can hear us, you're online, is that correct, please?
I can hear you.
Okay, Councilor Spickelmeyer, can you hear us?
Yes, I can, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Our next order of business is we're going to stand up and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. If you want to join us at home, you're free to do that. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And what a privilege it is to live in this country. Our next order of business is discussion items. Please note that identifying an item as an action item does not require City Council to vote on that item. Item A is the 2024 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. Presentation from Personnel Gage on the 2024 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. This is an action item, and we have our Finance Director with us here tonight, and we have Ron Elberg from Personnel Gage. So I will turn this over to you, Amy, if you'd like to introduce our guest and go from there.
Thank you, Mayor. Amy Gordon, City of Lewiston Finance Director. So this afternoon we have Ms. Aliberti with Personnel Gage that will be presenting the city's audit report. And this afternoon she'll go through details of the audit report and give you a detailed summary of all that's in the book in front of you. And then this evening she will return to your regular meeting and ask for formal approval of the meeting. And I would just like to take the opportunity to thank Dawn and her team for being so professional to work with and courteous towards myself and our staff. And more importantly, I'd like to thank my staff for all the work that they do these last few months. Specifically, Claire Blewett, the accounting supervisor. She really accommodates myself and the auditors in adjusting your schedule and trying to get these books out timely. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, Amy. Dawn, welcome.
Thank you.
Turn the floor over to you. You may have to.
Thank you, Mayor.
You might have to come up here
Okay.
just a little bit to make sure that our two counselors at home can hear
Okay.
what you're saying. I think these might be microphones up above, but just in case.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm gonna get the pointer or the clicker. You okay if I sit?
Please.
Thank you for having me here today. And we'll go through the audited financial statement for the September 30, 2024 financials. As Amy pointed out, I'm Dawn Aliberti with Personnel Gage. I'm the audit partner, as well as manage the staff that are working on the engagement. We have worked with the city for a number of years doing this with different team members as we go along, and Amy and her staff do a fantastic job getting us the information. We so appreciate everything that they have done to make this audit go smoothly and successfully. So that we'll just talk about a few things. As auditors, we have some required communication items that we discuss with you that's required by standards, and so we're going to talk about those. Some of the slides have to do with that, and then we'll kind of get into some of the highlights of the financial statements themselves, and hopefully you can, if you have a question and something comes up, I'll be happy to answer those for you, and Amy's here also for more detail as far as what may be in those particular numbers if there's. As far as the auditors and the audit team, we're required to be independent of the city of Lewiston and not have any connections with the city to ensure that the financial statements is an independent audit. The information is to confirm what you see throughout the year. So when you come to a meeting like this where we talk about the financial statements, they should not be a surprise to you. It should be something that, the numbers should be stuff that you've seen before, maybe in a different format, may it look different, but shouldn't be any surprises. No new information. And what we're here to do is to talk about the evaluate the quality of the accounting records, since that's what an audit is doing for us here. So we have audited the accompanying financial statements according to standards for the September 30, 2024. We have covered the governmental activity, the business type activities, the component unit, URA is also included in here, each major fund, and all the aggregate remaining funds. And we'll kind of talk about what those are when we talk about the funds, what's governmental, what's business type, and we'll have a little bit of discussion throughout what funds those are that the city, as a city, operates. So in the book that you were all handed, and the annual comprehensive financial report that you were handed, is broke down into 5 sections. There's the introductory section, which will have a letter from the mayor in there, just basically, as it says, introductory, a little bit of how the operations are set up as far as the flow chart. The financial overview section, that's what I kind of the guts of the audit, the guts of what we're going to be talking about here. The financial statements, that's kind of all the extra, those other funds that we were talking about. The statistical section is really a fantastic section that's put together by the city staff that really talks about all the areas of the city. It's a great read if you're want to know, or citizens want to know about the city, so that's a great thing. And then the last section is the single audit, which is a breakdown of the federal expenditures that the city had during the fiscal year. The audit opinion, which is on page 11 of your book, it's, I don't know, it's probably 3-4 pages long, and I'm going to sum her up. Do the financial statements represent what really happened in the city's finances for the year? And it's like 3 pages long, has a bunch of information in it, but the answer is yes, it's an unmodified or a clean opinion, so that's the best you can do. There's a few other audit reports involved in the audit of the city. The other one that's on page 166 to 167. This is the over the federal awards. So basically, there's no issues, there's no concerns whether regulations are not being followed. The city is required to have an audit under the uniform guidance. We call it single audit as slang. Of that, if you spend over $750,000 in federal funds, that threshold is increasing to $1 million next fiscal year, 25. But you, as a city, has always exceeded $1 million anyway, so won't probably fall off that threshold. No.
That could be a real challenge next year.
That-
Tracking all those federal dollars and what we're doing with them and what somebody else is doing with them.
Yeah. So that's on that page that we've issued. It's a clean and unmodified opinion on that as well. The other report is on page 164. This is over internal controls. Basically, we don't give an opinion on that, but we report if there is any issues regarding internal controls, and this is going to be a clean opinion as well on that financial, or excuse me, on those opinions. The 3 opinions that 3 reports I just talked about, that is what belongs to President Gage. The rest of the information belongs to the city. Auditors issue opinions on the financial statements, and those are the things that belong to President Gage. So as auditors, we have some responsibilities. We are conducting our audit following standards when we plan in timely scope of the engagement. We are conducting our audit according to standards. We gave a reasonable assurance, not an absolute assurance, about the financial records are materially accurate. When I say reasonable, we do samples, we do testing. We do not look at every single transaction within the city's books. If we did, I would be a member of Amy's staff, which I couldn't be because I'm independent, right? So we do some testing. We focus on areas where we feel that have the highest risk, highest amount of transactions, that kind of thing. That's where we focus on. We keep professional skepticism. We try to gain an understanding of the internal controls. We determine whether the city has a going concern. So what is a going concern? Will the city continue operation for 12 months after the end of the fiscal year? And so that we have no concerns that the city is not going to continue that period of time. Management also has responsibilities. So that includes you folks as city council. You're responsible for the financial statements, making sure that there are internal controls in place, or directing that. You are somewhat part of that through budget approvals and reviewing the financial information and asking questions if things need to be asked, and making sure that they have the staff on board knows what appropriate accounting policies. Every financial statement, whether it's the city of Lewiston or some business that you're involved with or a nonprofit board you're on, has some sort of estimate. It's an integral part to pretty much any financial statement. City of Lewiston has theirs as well, and a few key ones for their estimates is the allowance for uncollectible accounts. This is one of the big ones. Is the balances that are due to the city for primarily ambulance or utility billings, is that stuff going to be collected? And so there's typically an allowance of some that isn't going to be collected, and that's an estimate. Useful lives of capital assets is an estimate. How long is that police vehicle or fire vehicle going to last, or a city vehicle? It's being depreciated over what's felt to be the useful life, 5 or 7 years, something like that. Anything, it may last longer, it may not, so it's still an estimate. There are some medical insurance unpaid claims. That is determined by an actuary of what they feel the liability of claims that are for the fiscal year that have not been paid, so that's a liability. Workers' comp things, there's net pension assets and liabilities, so governmental entities are required to report a liability or an asset for what perceived shortage may occur or overage may occur, and then whether there's leases. In the first part of the book is the management discussion and analysis, page 14 through 32. This is just a summary of the whole book. So some of that information that is kind of in the guts is discussed there. Well, it's a quick read if you're trying to just kind of get an overview of what really went on in the city. The financial statements, just kind of let you know, include the airport additions. The city is half owner of the airport, and so the airport added $2.2 million in capital assets during the year, so 1.1 of those was added to the city's financial books. Also included is the Urban Renewal Agency. It's a component unit, and we'll talk about some of those columns here in a little bit. Also, the City of Lewiston Employee Benefit Plan Trust is included, and the Police Employee Retirement Plan is also included. And so we're going to see some of that information when we go through this. A lot of information, right? So the first couple of statements that I'm going to talk to you about, these terms are going to be crucial, I guess. Accrual basis of accounting is recognizing economic events regardless of when the cash transactions occur. So revenue is recorded when it's earned, and expenses are recorded when that expense is incurred. So if somebody, guys, had some construction going on and construction occurred in September, but you didn't pay it until October, that is included as an expense on the books. Okay. A modified accrual basis of accounting, which is how the city, for the most part, operates most of the funds on a day-to-day basis, is through a measurable, available, when the funds are available for use, and that's how it's. So we'll talk about that a little bit. The first pages that we're going to talk about, and there's some highlights up here, is the statement of net positions on page 34 and 35. We're going to talk about the statement of activities, and these are what we call the government-wide statements. These are on the accrual basis of accounting. So I want to talk, the first page, on page 34, this is the statement of net position. I have highlighted a few items on there to kind of focus on. The cash and the investment activity of the city, or that's being held, and this is on everything except the police retirement and the benefit plan trusts are not included in here. But 81 million in cash and investments is what the city is holding. Of that, 63.9 is current assets and 17 million is for restricted assets and a non-current type activity. That's listed there in the green. In the blue, you'll see that's the capital assets, that's net of accumulated depreciation. Total capital assets is 237 million. Government-wide, government activities is 102 million, and business is 135 million. So these are the assets, everything from the land to the buildings, to the equipment, to the water systems, the sewer systems, the stormwater systems, everything that the city owns and uses to operate the city is included in the capital asset. Mentioned that there is a statement, of net pension assets. So there's a $17 million, 17.9 there in the purple. That is where the police retirement and the fire portion is technically overfunded. And that is how much belongs to the city's portion. So if everything shut down today, the city would be overfunded for their retirement folks by that amount. But we'll get to the next page. So here's the page 2, or on page 35, this is the liability and the net asset, net position section. So you'll see where I pointed out, you'll see right here that 18 million right there. That is also the net pension liability. So they don't want us to net those. They want them to be separate. This is where the rest of the employees of the government, of the city, is underfunded. The Percy plan is underfunded by the 18. So as of September 30, no, actually as of June 30, 2024, the state of Idaho's fund was 86% funded. So that difference is what's made up all your employees. The other thing I want to point out here on this particular screen is the pink highlight, and that is the debt, the long-term debt. You have, vouchers payable listed up there, accrued wages. Those are kind of the day-to-day type activities that takes to run the city, and they're current, so they're paid within a month or two of the end of the fiscal year. The amounts listed here, the current portion of bond payables, and then the long-term portion of bond payables, this is related to the water and the wastewater bonds and the liability that's out there. I listed the detail for those bonds are 65 through 67, and I'm not going to cover specifically, there's amortization schedules and shows you how much principal is due on each one of those bonds every year until it's paid off, interest, that kind of thing. So those are listed there. I did summarize it here, those bonds. So the wastewater bond, the balance as of the 2024, September 30, 2024 was 26.5 million. 26,500, okay. And then the amount paid for principal during the year, 1.7, and interest was 352,000 that was paid during the fiscal year. The water loan, the maximum borrowing on the water loan was 42 million. It ended up being a 41.7 million was the total drawdown on the bond. So I guess you could say that was under budget, right? And then there was some principal forgiveness of 926. So the balance as of 9/30/24 was 40,770,000, roughly. This bond closed on April 1st, and the first payment of $1,991,000 was paid in October of 2024. And the breakout of how much was principal here and interest that was paid as of October 2024. So there will now be regular every 6 months payments on both of those bonds based on the amortization schedule and agreement.
Remember the interest rate on those, Don?
One is 2.65.
1.6,
1.65. There you go.
Which is
No, apparently the answer is no.
which is water.
Yeah,
Water
and
is
it's-
1.65,
Yeah.
and wastewater, I think, is 1.
Yeah, they're down there.
Oh, 1.625 was water, 1.26 was wastewater.
Mhm.
That's listed in the detail. Also included in the financial statement is the Urban Renewal Agency. They also have a loan. The balance at the end of the year was $1,072,000. This was originally a $1.9 million loan for the East Orchards, and it paid in principal and interest $148,000. I'm going to back up real quick and I'll show you where that shows. Here you'll see, here's the component unit. This is the Urban Renewal Agency. So here is the balance, 118 as current and 954. The Urban Renewal Agency is only reflected on these first couple pages that I'm showing you of the financial statement. All the notes that are required for the Urban Renewal Agency are also included in here, but you will not see the component unit in a column or form anyplace else except from these first few pages. On page 36 is the statement of activities. This is basically the income statement for the city of Lewiston. It's kind of it's the way it's laid out is provided by standards, so we're required to report it this way. So you'll notice that expenses are reported on the left-hand side. There's some revenue here in the center. Goes over, has a summary of that, and then it goes down. So the governmental activity goes down here, and the business type activity goes here, and then you'll see here's that component unit set off to the side. They call it a discreetly presented, so it's discreetly hidden over there on the right, I guess, but that's what they call it. So that's how it reads. We'll get into the business type activity just in more detail after a while. You'll see that the city of Lewiston had a loss of 10 million, where, excuse me, the governmental activity had a loss, where the business type had a gain, for a total change of $10,900,000. I'm going to point out right here, there's a transfer, and you'll say, oh, city's not supposed to have transfers, but during the year, a stormwater fund was established under the business type activities, and those assets from the stormwater, most of them came from the city was holding the stormwater system, and so those were transferred to that that business type activity. And we'll see that here in a little bit on a different sheet. The balance sheet and governmental funds, this is on that modified accrual, so this is kind of more like on a day-to-day basis, page 37. The way this presents is the assets based on the major funds. So as part of our audit, it's determined which funds within the city are considered major. And in this particular case, it's always the general fund. The general fund is always a major fund. Transportation, capital projects, and economic development are the major funds in the city. The other governmental funds are listed on whatever number that is that's underneath the stop share button. It's 90 something. So that's the major funds. Coming down here to the bottom, this is the carryover or carry forward. So the city of Lewiston, for its governmental activity, has 24 million in carryover funds, so equity. Of that money, 10 million is considered unassigned. So 10 million of the 34 is unassigned, and it's sitting in the general fund. All these other funds have a particular purpose, so their net, their fund balance has some sort of restriction or some sort of appointment to it. Only the 10,365,000. Amy, you remember the days of service that was?
Oh, I didn't calculate it out.
Okay. I think it was in the, below 40 days and under, I can't remember now, I should have calculated it. Anyway, so that is the carryover right here, 10 million unassigned. The revenue and expenses by those funds as well is listed here. So the major funds as well, general, same ones on the other sheet. Other funds is listed on page 94. The net change, this is the income or loss reflected for the year. So you have a loss on the general, a 3.9, and then income on the rest. No fund has a negative fund balance. So no fund within the city of Lewiston has a negative fund balance for the year. Here's what I stated before. So the carryover for all the governmental funds is 34 million. General fund carryover was 16, but only 10 million of it is unassigned that is available for use that isn't already vended. The non-major funds, I told you that one column that was in the 90s off there. The balance sheet's on page 93. The income statement part of it is on 94. And then there's budget versus actual for all those funds, the non-major funds as well. So what are those? That would be like cemetery perpetual care, transit, library. Did I miss one? Okay, I missed one. Cemetery, library, transit, and cemetery perpetual care. And then the business improvement district went away last year, but there's still a line for that. So those would be the non-major funds. We talked about the major ones. Those would be the non-major. Oh, there they are. What the heck? I should just hit the button, right? Okay, there we go. Here's the revenue section of that. Net fund balance, again, the change in net assets right here. That's the income and all those funds. Here's the business improvement district, which was closed during 2024. So this $6,000 was transferred to a different fund during the year, the general fund, during the year. So that would be transfers that would be unusual, opening and closing of a fund. You'll notice that there is a transfer here of $50,000 from the cemetery perpetual care to the cemetery fund, and that is required by the way those funds are set up through Idaho code. So that's a transfer that's allowed, and there are restrictions to what can be transferred. But the city finance staff, as well as us during our audits, verify that they follow the appropriateness of those transfers. Proprietary funds. So this is when we're talking about the ones that are basically in business to support themselves. So we're going to talk about the balance sheet, income statement, and then those are the pages associated with those. So water, wastewater, sanitation, and stormwater. Those are those business type funds. You'll see that internal service funds are listed over there on the right for part of this category. But internal service funds would include fleet, information systems, and workers' comp. So just pointing out, you've seen these numbers before, because for the proprietary funds, they are on the accrual basis of accounting. So these numbers will match exactly to those first pages on that we talked about, first few pages. So there won't be any difference. So this number here in the total, in the green, you'll see in the total that the investments and the cash, that equals what we talked about earlier. So here's where it's split out by those particular funds. So you know who has money and who has less. Here's the liabilities. So here again is the So here here's those loans, the liabilities that we talked about earlier, the water and the wastewater liability loan bonds that we were talking about. Here again is by fund, business type funds. You'll see where water, the income, each fund had income during the year. As I pointed out on one of the other sheets, the transfer, here's the 9.5 million that's transferred into the stormwater fund, and 9 million was the system itself net of depreciation. So the stormwater system and net of depreciation was 9 million, and then there was approximately 500,000-ish of funds that were being held in another governmental fund for the stormwater purpose, so that was transferred into that. Talk a little bit about the fiduciary funds. Okay. So what are those? That's the employee retirement plan, the police retirement plan, and the employee benefit plan trust. For those items, the employee benefit plan trust has been audited separately. We did that, and that report was issued by the end of December 31st, 2024, had to be submitted to the Department of Insurance by that particular date. So that audit was finished, and those numbers have been audited separately of its own. They are included in this financial statement. Employee retirement plan, that is the police retirement plan. It's a closed plan. There's still 30 individuals receiving benefits within that plan. There's nobody that's still working. They're either prior employees or their significant others who still remains receiving benefits under that particular retirement plan. And at this point, based on the actuary report, that plan is got more money in it that they feel is going to cover the benefits throughout those 30 folks' life.
So does that mean, sorry, am I allowed to ask a question? Okay, I was like, does that mean we don't need to put more into it ever, or are we?
At this point, I think it's been, I don't remember how many years,
This is our,
no money has been
we've
put
gone 2 years without funding it.
Okay.
3 years ago, it was partially funded from what it had been the year prior.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the actuaries who determine whether we should fund it or not. So that can change based off market conditions.
Okay, that's what I was.
It can also change if there's a significant change in the actuary tables, like mortality rates, those can impact it. And so that's why we have the actuary done every 2 years.
Okay.
On page 88 is the report from the actuary that indicates in the 2023 and 2024, no money was paid in to the fund. And you can see for the last, even the 8 years prior to that, the amount that was contributed to that particular plan over the time. So it's that top line. That was the contribution.
Mm-hmm. Here.
So as long as the market stays strong and like Amy said, those changes, then at this point, they don't expect, I don't think they didn't say, they said that no payment was necessary, I think for 25 as well in the actual report, so as it goes, so far, so good.
Awesome, thank you.
Good question. Here is the income statement for those particular funds. So down here, we'll have the change in net position again. So both of those funds had income. You'll notice that for the police retirement, it had 2.1 million of increase in the fair value. So that's unrealized type of gains. Right now, strong. Internal service funds, we talked about that real briefly. There's fleet, workers' comp, and information systems. Those are reported. Fleet had income where workers' comp and information systems, they do business and are there to support the rest of the city as an internal service. Just a little overview of the budget comparison schedule. So the major funds, there's on page 82 through 84. points out the budget versus actual for those major funds that we talked about. General, transportation, economic development. I don't know if the other one was.
Did you say capital?
Capital project. And then, no funds exceeded budget, so no fund exceeded budget. The Percy, as we talked about, 4 on page 85, 86 explains, shows kind of like we just did with the police of the funding and coverage and things like that is listed in those statements as well. Modified approach for infrastructure reporting, that's the airport. And so there's some required disclosures on that as well on page 2. This is a schedule of expenditures, of federal expenditures during the year. So I think I told you that the city exceeded the 750,000. I know it's hard to see, but it is 3,337,000, or 3,337,000 here is the total expenditures for the year. Of this, we audited as a major program, the capitalization, this is the drawdown of the bond of $1.5 million. So what does that mean? As we, as auditors, do an assessment of this form, we make sure that the information being reported here is accurate, that the numbers are accurate, and then we have to identify specific funds or groups of funds or programs in this case that exceed certain thresholds, and then they have to be audited within every couple of years. So basically, we had not looked at that water, the drinking water, since 2 years ago, 2022. So it needed to be audited this year based on the requirements. So anyway, that's the funding. You'll see here at the top, the community development grants, 374,000. A lot of transit, $1 million, $1.1 million. You can kind of see where all the federal money is going to pay for within the city. So I told you that the threshold is going up from 750,000 to 1 million. So even if you're not going to have the drinking water grant in 2025, you still take that out, you're still going to be over $1 million. You're still going to be required to audit.
That particular fund is required to get audited due to the amount.
That was required. It was a high dollar amount, and then since it hit a threshold, any program that was over 700,000, if it hadn't been audited in the last couple of years, then we're required to look at it.
Okay.
So it hadn't been audited, but it's going to drop off because you're not going to have any more drawdowns of federal money there. So that one's going to go away. So we'll probably go back to auditing. Well, I think we looked at transit last year, and we looked at, I think, 3 programs last year: transit, the wastewater. I don't remember what the other one was, but we looked at 3 different ones because of the way the requirement was they hadn't been audited. And
Yeah. I heard it over the phone, but not.
yeah, it's kind of a complicated calculation. I won't bore you guys with how it works, but if you would like to know, we can sit down and have a great discussion. But anyway, that's the federal funds. Here we go. So as part of the required communications, do we have adjustments? There were some items that were identified after we received the financial data audit. We got those adjustments from the finance department. Basically, we call them period 13 adjustments. The accounting or the finance department gives us, here's all the information ready for you guys to audit. They still have some work that they're doing as they're trying to finish reconciling, and sometimes things pop up, and then the city makes some journal entries and they provide them to us, and then we audit those journal entries too to make sure that they make sense. So any adjustments, and why is this important to talk about? So if we as auditors came across items in our audit that needed to be adjusted, and they were significant, then that would tell us that the information that has been provided to you as city council throughout the year may not have been as accurate as you thought. So that's why talking about adjustments is an important thing. So I can tell you that, we really didn't have any. City did identify some things, nothing that was significant that I feel that you as council would make a different business decision. That's what we call it, material type. We do help with some adjustments for presentation under the GASB, Government Auditing Standards Board regulations. So as part of that, we had no disagreements with management over accounting policies regarding reporting or any auditing type matters. We did not become aware of any fraud or legal acts during our audit process, and to let you know that on a financial statement audit, we are not looking for fraud. We're not hunting for fraud. We're not fraud auditing. We are doing a financial statement audit. If something becomes aware to us or somebody brings something up to us during our audit procedures, then we are obligated to let you know, and then decisions would have to be made on how to proceed from there. So based on that, we did not become aware of any fraud or legal acts, nor were we told of any going on. If there's something else, but
The way it started.
oh, did it? And I got too antsy. I'm not very patient. So just a summary, the reports are all clean. And I just want to make sure I thank again the staff at the city, particularly Amy and Claire and all of her team for everything that they've done to make our auditing experience better. Have any questions? I'm happy to answer them now. If anything comes up any time of the year, you can always reach out to me. I'm happy to answer those. You have a great finance department that probably can answer your questions very well, but sometimes you may still have questions. And that's what we're here to help you with as well, is give you any sort of explanation that you feel you might need beyond from your own department. But I can. That's what I have for you. If you have any questions, I know that's a lot of information. It's a big book of love here. But yeah.
Thank you, Don. Councilor Spickelmeyer, any questions?
No questions here, thank you.
Thank you. Councilors? Questions, comments, compliments?
Thank you. I know this has taken a lot of work, a lot of hours.
Council President?
I'm good. Always does a good job.
I appreciate all the fine detail and being able to take this home and really analyze it, as well as having the overview of presentations. Those were layman's terms.
Councilor Wright, any questions?
Just curious, because this is my first time going through this, so of course a lot to read. But when the report talks about the city's capital asset balances, I thought I heard in previous meetings that there's some certain rules of how we have to sell assets, and it almost sounded like we don't make as much money on our assets when we sell them as somebody else because of the rules in place. If you're selling a piece of land, it has to be auctioned under some certain guidelines. So does that take that into account, that these assets have to be sold in a certain way?
Well, when we sell them below market value, we prefer that yes, that question when John's not in the room. I don't know, Counselor, if I understand the question, but John, does that make?
Well, what the reporting of the capital assets is at cost, that minus accumulated depreciation. That's what's being reported on the financial statements. The selling of assets is under code of how those are supposed to be handled. If there is, let's say it's completely depreciated, there's no useful life left of it, it's a surplus item, there's no no value left in it,
Mhm.
and it gets sold for $1, it's still a gain of $1 for the books. If there's still some useful life, say it's worth $5,000 and you sell it for $4,000, then there would be a loss on that particular sale, and that goes into the financial statement. So the way things are sold is under code, Amy, maybe you, a specific way of handling sales, the reporting within the financial statements. The capital assets are at cost, whatever it was purchased for, even if it was 50 years ago, whatever that cost was, net of depreciation. So on a 50-year item, unless it's land, there's no value left. Land doesn't ever depreciate. So if you sell that under the cost of it, then or more than cost, then there'll be a gain or loss on the sale of that within the financial.
So you're looking at how much did we spend and then whatever depreciation has done to that item since.
Right.
then.
So let's
That's how
say,
you come up with the
so let's say
asset
if
value.
it's a vehicle and the vehicle was worth 30,000 and it's been used its whole useful life
Mhm.
and it's completely depreciated, so now the value of it is 0 on the books. And you surplus it and you sell it for the highest bidder for $500, that's a $500 gain
Gotcha.
because it doesn't have any value. It didn't have any value on the books,
Right.
even, yeah. Does that make sense?
That
Okay.
does, yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Amy, did you have, comment about, or, I'm not gonna remember the right accounting term, but basically, our number of days we have?
I forgot to calculate it. I did for the audit committee, and I was
Yes.
thinking 55 days. But, or no, that's not right. No, that's, maybe, it was over 90 days.
What is the
Um,
daily number, 85?
The best practice is 90 days.
No, for a daily expenditure.
88,000, I think 85,000.
Okay, so if we take the 10,365,675, right, divided by 85,000, Don? Yeah, it comes up to 120 approximately.
And then I will add, the general fund had the loss of just under 4 million, and then the information system had a loss. Those are planned losses. We wrote the budget knowing that our expenses were gonna be more than our revenue, and then we just balanced that out with the use of reserves.
Was that the airport?
Well,
At least
the
1
24 budget was written to utilize 2 million of reserves. Council then amended the budget to utilize even more reserves, but yes, 4 million for the airport.
Yeah.
So if you look at that on the surface, where we had just under a $4 million loss, we actually came out better than budgeted by a couple $1 million. But those were planned.
Yeah.
So,
But they're still called
Going-
losses, but they're
Yeah.
planned losses.
yes. Because your use of reserves doesn't materialize to an actual revenue.
Right.
It's just a budgeted.
Okay. We see, an increase, I see the golf course here, I don't think, 2024 yet on here. Now, is that like overall losses or where they're making more money?
On that particular line that we're looking at, she's in the statistical section. Under the government, under the business type, the golf used to be part of the business type funds. So that was closed last year, and it is now part of the general fund.
Oh, okay.
And the golf activity is part of recreation now. So unless you specifically want golf activity, that is included with the recreation fund in the general fund section. So So you're not gonna be able to see it completely. If you look on page 36, as an example, you'll see about, I don't know, 7 or 8 lines down, you'll see recreation
Okay.
here. So the golf activity, golf revenue, golf expenses, everything is included in that particular line item now.
But other recreation as well, not just golf, right?
Yes.
Not just
Mhm.
pertaining to golf
Yeah.
course.
Not just, so that's everything. And before, the golf was its own fund under the business type funds, and that was closed, and now it's being handled under the general fund, specifically in the recreation
activity for you.
Okay, thank you. Was there a reason we did that?
The change in the operations of the golf course, change that.
Yeah.
You want
Oh,
Yeah,
the
Mayor, you
contractor.
want to talk about
We
that?
took over management of the golf course, and we absorbed all the assets of the golf course. For the Parks and Rec program. And we pay a management fee for that course go. And we're working on some kind of profit sharing, whether it happens today or tomorrow, but we're moving that direction to, as the course gets its feet under it and continues to grow. But we pay for some of the capital improvements, but not all of them. They have to reinvest some of the monies into that, and they're allowed to do that, out of the funds that they receive. We help them out with things. We put some IT stuff out there to allow them to improve their vendor services. I don't know how that works exactly. So we
Just some equipment purchases.
Yeah.
For the operations.
Yeah, so, no, we're making progress, but I think the day's coming when, the council's gonna have to decide if they want the city to manage it also, and then from city employees, and these kind of things. So we could decide that budget, but we obviously have to honor the contract we have with them and then decide whether to renew it or not. So, but that's the way it was designed. Remember when, the previous operator left, he gave a 30-day notice. He was taking his carts with him, so that was not a very comfortable position for us, but we made it, and of course, was done a fantastic job for us.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know or get a report back on if we're getting revenue by having them. I mean, obviously not today, I'm just, some point get an update on if they're revenue, we're making revenue, if it's more cost effective for them running it versus us taking it back.
So yes and no, whether we have all that, we are in the middle of putting together this plan, for the next few years, and we have it over. So it'll be slow getting that in place until we get a few positions.
First Code does an annual update to council, and so that should be about May.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Thank you.
But I think they're also bringing savings to the city that we don't realize, indirectly. We're bringing the purchasing power of a large golf course management, things like that. We're winning in a lot of ways to do that.
I've heard good things from people that are there using the golf course. It's good things. Citizens are saying it.
Our rental rate went up, lease rate to the airport,
That was great.
but we moved it in-house.
That makes sense.
All right, any further questions, council? If not, well, I'd like to thank Dawn for being here. We'll see you again tonight. And especially want to thank Amy and Claire and her whole team. They worked very, very hard over the last 2 weeks. Long hours. Well, but when I have a chance tonight, you'll have a chance tonight to thank them for their effort. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'm ready to adjourn.
President Clifford to adjourn. Those in favor, please signify by saying
Aye.
opposed. They're adjourned. Thank you.